G'day everybody, it's Andrew Petersen and I'm here outside the New York City Library in New York City to share with you BCSDA Australia's insights from the global stage that I think have important implications for Australian business over the next 7.5 years. Specifically, I'm talking about the meeting of the countries at the United Nations around the 2030 Agenda and specifically the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, this isn't just a diplomatic gathering, it's actually a confirmation of the shared international growth agenda that's been anchored in the realisation of the 17 goals now for almost 8 years. And don't forget, we're not just talking 17 goals, we're talking 169 targets and 231 unique indicators of development over that period of time. And this particular gathering was arguably a clarion call for action that we all need to take. So what happened at these events? Well, coming into the SDG Summit dialogue, the UN had released research that identified that while some of the progress had been made in certain aspects of the SDGs, such as electricity, immunisation, and maternal and child health, gender equality, and as well as environmental protection, these achievements are largely unevenly distributed and insufficient to meet the goals by 2030. In fact, only 15% of the goals overall have been progressed. So the dialogue then served as a critical platform for a number of stakeholder, government, business, academia and representatives from civil society to come together to discuss the future of the Sustainable Development Goals. Its outcome was a call for countries to re-energise their commitments and double down on the outcomes of the SDGs. They also stressed the importance of a greater high-level engagement and a committed political will to realising the goals, as well as, and I think this is important for business to know, a call for more robust monitoring and accountability around the achievement of the goals. If we move on to the SDG Action Weekend, which happened just before the summit, this was a landmark 2-day event that was actually convened by the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. And on the first day, the mobilisation day, he saw stakeholders, including BCSDA Australia, representing the Australian business sector, outlining corporate contributions and contributions from a number of different regions and stakeholder communities. The acceleration day, the next day that followed, then focused on 12 new UN high-impact initiatives, such as in energy compacts and food systems transformation. Now, these have been designed to fast-track progress towards the SDGs, and I think they'll be the ones to watch. Then we get to the SDG Summit itself on the 18th and the 19th of September, and this was the centrepiece of the week's deliberations about the future of the goals. Delegates from all countries, including Australia, adopted the political declaration that affirms ongoing commitment to the 2030 Agenda, and interestingly did so without any objection at the opening segment of the SDG Summit. The summit then featured dialogues on how steps can be taken to scale up action, build new forms of resilience, and, where possible, begin to utilise and mobilise finance not just in the developing world but in partnership across the developed and developing world. It identified also key areas of convergence like climate change resilience, social protection, and an interesting one for all of the SDGs, all 17, is the leveraging of digitalisation. So what are the policy implications? What does it actually mean for Australia? Well, from a policy standpoint, the question will be asked if the Australian government needs to explicitly align its national policies with these global commitments. So could this mean that Australians, and business in particular, could expect to see more supportive policies around social protection systems, climate resilience and digitalisation? What do you think? We'd like to hear in the comments. And why should business actually care about what's been happening here during the SDG Summit? What's the takeaway for the business community? Well, it's interesting because sustainable development is, as the UN Secretary General put it, the best business plan of all. So aligning your business with the SDGs is not just good for the planet, it's actually good for your bottom line. So the outcomes of the SDG Summit have important implications for business. as it again highlights the need for more responsible and sustainable business practice that actually aligns with the SDGs, the Paris Agreement, the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, and the noise of an ambulance going past, and the UN Guiding Principles on Human Rights. The summit also demonstrated the potential of business to contribute to the SDGs through innovation, through investment, partnership, and interestingly, through advocacy, positive advocacy of the goals themselves. As we read in the 2017 Business and Sustainable Development Commission report, it estimates that achieving the SDGs in 4 key sectors, energy, cities, food and agriculture, and health and wellbeing, could actually create a $12 trillion new market opportunity for business by 2030. And what about the corporate accountability issue? Well, it's not just a buzzword anymore. Implementing robust monitoring and reporting mechanisms is very much the key conversation amongst the business community at this particular summit. Whether it was under the TCFD, the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, the just launched recommendations on the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosure, or the new disclosure provisions in training under the International Sustainability Standards Board. They won't just keep a sustainable business practice plan aligned and on track out to 2030, but they'll actually contribute to a culture of continuous improvement. Now, we will have more to say about how business can plan and prepare for this accelerated SDG agenda in the upcoming briefings to our members. So finally, the SDGs are not a distant UN agenda, but an agreed global development roadmap in which everyone has now a role, including business in Australia. The time clearly for action is now, and business case couldn't be clearer. We've been part of, and we have been there in New York to see the stage to be set for accelerated action over the next 7.58 years. Thanks very much for joining me. Bye.